1945, December 5, Flight 19, 5 TBF Avengers, lost with 14 airmen, and later the same day PBM Mariner BuNo 59225 lost with 13 airmen while searching for Flight 19. Flight 19 was a training flight of 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers that disappeared on December 5, 1945, while over the Atlantic. The squadron's flight plan was scheduled to take them due east from Fort Lauderdale for 141 miles, 227 kilometers, north for 73 miles, 117 kilometers, and then back over a final 140-mile, 230-kilometer, leg to complete the exercise. The flight never returned to base. The disappearance was attributed by Navy investigators to navigational error leading to the aircraft running out of fuel. One of the search and rescue aircraft deployed to look for them, a PBM Mariner with a 13-man crew, also disappeared. A tanker off the coast of Florida reported seeing an explosion and observing a widespread oil slick when fruitlessly searching for survivors. The weather was becoming stormy by the end of the incident. According to contemporaneous sources, the Mariner had a history of explosions due to vapor leaks when heavily loaded with fuel, as it might have been for a potentially long search and rescue operation. Flight 19 was the designation of a group of 5 General Motors TBM Avenger torpedo bombers that disappeared over the Bermuda Triangle on December 5, 1945, after losing contact during a United States Navy overwater navigation training flight from Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale, Florida. All 14 airmen on the flight were lost, as were all 13 crew members of a Martin PBM Mariner flying boat that subsequently launched from Naval Air Station Banana River to search for Flight 19. A report by Navy investigators concluded that flight leader Lieutenant Charles C. Taylor mistook small islands offshore for the Florida Keys after his compasses stopped working, resulting in the flight heading over open sea and away from land. The report was later amended by the Navy to read cause unknown to avoid blaming Taylor for the loss of 5 aircraft and 14 men. The report attributed the loss of the PBM aircraft to an explosion in midair while searching for the flight. Flight 19 undertook a routine navigation and combat training exercise in TBM type aircraft. The assignment was called Navigation Problem Number 1. A combination of bombing and navigation, which other flights had completed or were scheduled to undertake that day. The flight leader was United States Navy Lieutenant Charles Carroll Taylor, who had about 2,500 flying hours, mostly in aircraft of this type, while his trainee pilots each had 300 total, and 60 flight hours in the Avenger. Taylor had completed a combat tour in the Pacific Theater as torpedo bomber pilot on the aircraft carrier USS Hancock and had recently arrived from NAS Miami, where he had also been a VTB, torpedo bombing plane, instructor. The student pilots had recently completed other training missions in the area where the flight was to take place. They were U.S. Marine Captains Edward Joseph Powers and George William Stivers, U.S. Marine Second Lieutenant Forrest James Gerber and USN Ensign Joseph Tipton Bossy. The aircraft were 3 TBM, 1Cs, BuNo 45714, FT3, BuNo 46325, FT81, BuNo 73209, FT117, 1 TBM, 1E, BuNo 46094, FT36, and 1 TBM, 3, BuNo 23307, FT28. Each aircraft was a version of the Grumman TBF Avenger, built by General Motors' Eastern Aircraft Division under wartime production license. Under the U.S. Navy aircraft designation system used during World War II, Grumman-built Avengers were designated TBF and GM-built aircraft such as these were designated TBM. Each was fully fueled, and during pre-flight checks, it was discovered they were all missing clocks. Navigation of the route was intended to teach dead reckoning principles, which involved calculating, among other things, elapsed time. The apparent lack of timekeeping equipment was not a cause for concern, as it was assumed each man had his own watch. Takeoff was scheduled for 13:45 local time, but the late arrival of Taylor delayed departure until 1410. Weather at NAS Fort Lauderdale was described as favorable, sea state moderate to rough. Taylor was supervising the mission, and a trainee pilot had the role of leader out front. Called Naval Air Station, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Navigation problem number 1. The exercise involved 3 different legs, but the actual flight should have flown 4. After takeoff, they flew on heading 091 degrees, almost due east, for 56 nautical miles, 64 miles, 104 kilometers, until reaching Hens and Chickens Shoals, commonly called Chicken Rocks, where low-level bombing practice was carried out. The flight was to continue on that heading for another 67 nautical miles, 77 miles, 124 kilometers, before turning onto a course of 346 degrees for 73 nautical miles, 84 miles, 135 kilometers, in the process overflying Grand Bahama Island. The next scheduled turn was to a heading of 241 degrees to fly 120 nautical miles, 140 miles, 220 kilometers, at the end of which the exercise was completed and the Avengers would turn left to then return to NAS Fort Lauderdale. Radio conversations between the pilots were overheard by base and other aircraft in the area. The practice bombing operation is known to have been carried out because at about 1500 a pilot requested and was given permission to drop his last bomb. 40 minutes later, another flight instructor, Lieutenant Robert F. Cox in FT 74, who was forming up with his group of students for the same mission, received an unidentified transmission. An unidentified crew member asked Powers, one of the students, for his compass reading. Powers replied, "I don't know where we are. We must have got lost after that last turn." Cox then transmitted, "This is FT 74, plane or boat calling Powers, please identify yourself so someone can help you." The response after a few moments was a request from the others in the flight for suggestions. FT 74 tried again and a man identified as FT 28, Taylor, came on. FT 28, "This is FT 74, what is your trouble?" "Both of my compasses are out," Taylor replied, "and I am trying to find Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I am overland but it's broken. I am sure I'm in the Keys but I don't know how far down and I don't know how to get to Fort Lauderdale." FT 74 informed the NAS that aircraft were lost, then advised Taylor to put the sun on his port wing and fly north up the coast to Fort Lauderdale. Base operations then asked if the flight leader's aircraft was equipped with a standard YG/IFF transmitter, which could be used to triangulate the flight's position, but the message was not acknowledged by FT 28. Later he would indicate that his transmitter was activated. Instead, at 16:45, FT 28 radioed, "We are heading 030 degrees for 45 minutes, then we will fly north to make sure we are not over the Gulf of Mexico." During this time no bearings could be made on the flight, and IFF could not be picked up. Taylor was told to broadcast on 4805 kHz. This order was not acknowledged, so he was asked to switch to 3000 kHz. The search and rescue frequency. Taylor replied, "I cannot switch frequencies. I must keep my planes intact." At 16:56, Taylor was again asked to turn on his transmitter for YG if he had one. He did not acknowledge but a few minutes later advised his flight change course to 090 degrees, due east, for 10 minutes. About the same time someone in the flight said, "Damn it, if we could just fly west we would get home." Head west. Damn it. This difference of opinion later led to questions about why the students did not simply head west on their own. It has been explained that this can be attributed to military discipline. As the weather deteriorated, radio contact became intermittent, and it was believed that the 5 aircraft by this point were more than 200 nautical miles, 230 miles, 370 kilometers, out to sea east of the Florida Peninsula. Taylor radioed will fly 270 degrees west until landfall or running out of gas and requested a weather check at 1724. By 1750 several land-based radio stations had triangulated Flight 19's position as being within a 100 nautical mile, 120 mile, 190 kilometer radius of 29 degrees north 79 degrees west. Flight 19 was north of the Bahamas and well off the coast of central Florida. At 18:04, Taylor radioed to his flight holding 270. "We didn't fly far enough east, we may as well just turn around and fly east again." By that time, the weather had deteriorated even more and the sun had set. Around 1820, Taylor's last message was received. It has also been reported that Taylor's last message was received at 19:04. He was heard saying, "All planes close up tight, we'll have to ditch unless landfall. When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, 38 liters, we all go down together." As it became obvious the flight was lost, air bases, aircraft, and merchant ships were alerted. A consolidated PBY Catalina departed after 1800 to search for Flight 19 and guide them back if they could be located. After dark, 2 Martin PBM Mariner flying boats originally scheduled for their own training flights were diverted to perform square pattern searches in the area west of 29 degrees north 79 degrees west. U.S. Navy Squadron Training No. 49 PBM, 5BU No. 59225 took off at 1927 from Naval Air Station Banana River, now Patrick Space Force Base, called in a routine radio message at 1930 and was never heard from again. At 21:15, the tanker SS Gaines Mills reported it had observed flames from an apparent explosion leaping 100 feet, 30 meters, high and burning for 10 minutes, at position 28.59 degrees north 80.25 degrees west. Captain Shauna Stanley reported unsuccessfully searching for survivors through a pool of oil and aviation gasoline. The escort carrier USS Solomons also reported losing radar contact with an aircraft at the same position and time.